Well, hello everyone. This is Joe Drums, actually known as Joe Tortonesi. Welcome to Joe's Drum Shop. This is the 7th episode. If you haven't seen the show before, you're in for a real treat. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're actually doing this particular book called the Fast Track Drums Method, and this has been a real fun book to get into. It basically starts you off and gets you going pretty up and running pretty quick. And a lot of my students that I teach drum lessons to, they really enjoy this book. There's a series of books that we're going to be going through, and this is the very first book. And we're almost at the end of the book. We've got some songs to do. We've been through notes, we've been through patterns and beats, and fills, and drum solos, and hopefully you're going to understand this stuff as well. Even if you don't, you can still kind of get an idea of what drums are all about. And that's what it is definitely all about, is having fun. We're actually on page 42, and the name of this is called If at First. It's called 82. This is the exercise 82, and each one has its own little exercise in the book. This particular one is a song, and this song is not a big song or a long song. It's fairly short. It has what they call a first and second ending. And basically what that means is the first ending, you'll see it'll say a number 1, and it'll have a fill, and then it wants you to go back to the beginning of the song again. Now the reason why they do this is because this particular song, being short as it is, it only needed 1 page to write out because of the way we're using the first and second ending. Again, what that means is that I can actually play this whole song without actually having to write out the rest of it on another page. So they made it really short, so they didn't have to write out the same thing twice. So that's what makes it more of an abbreviation or an easy way for the writer to write the drum part out, and that way he doesn't have to write a whole mess of other stuff when it's the same thing. And so that's what that is. And for the drummer reading this, it makes it easier as well, because again, he doesn't have to turn the page or anything. So that's what's nice about these repeat endings. And this is called a repeat ending, the first and second ending. And we're going to get our taste of it right now. I'm going to break down this song as we go through it, step by step. And then I'm going to play the actual song, and you'll get to hear what the song sounds like. This is kind of a funky song, funky rock song, I guess you could say. It's not too fast, not too slow. But the first part of it, I'm going to show the pattern. It starts off with a crash, and we'll do this right now. So it's going to go like this. All right, that's the first line. The second line basically is going to be the same pattern. We're going to have a little short fill towards the end of it. And let's go ahead and play this right now. All right. Now, the next line actually is we've got 2 repeats. So the last measure I just got done playing, that one with the crash, snare drum, and a few bass drums, that's going to repeat again twice because we've got 2 repeats, and then we got the first ending. Now once we get through the first ending, that's going to make us go back to the very beginning of the whole song again, and we'll play those first 2 lines one more time. When we get to the third line, the second time we do, we're going to jump to the second ending. And I'm going to play that right now. We'll play the first ending, and then I'll play the beginning again, and then we'll go back to the second ending and keep going through the rest of the song. So here we go. All right, as you can see there, I went right through the first ending and we went right back up to the top again. Now I'm going to play through the top all the way through and just till the second ending. That way you can kind of get a better idea how it's going to sound. So let's do that now. All right, as you can see, we're on the second ending, and now we have 3 more lines to take care of. This time it actually is going to switch around. It's going to go right to a hi-hat. So we're going to use the hi-hat. It's not playing eighth notes, it's playing quarter notes. In fact, just like we did the ride cymbal with the quarter notes, the hi-hat's going to play quarter notes as well. Sometimes they use eighth notes, sometimes sixteenths. In this particular case, this song just needs quarter notes for the hi-hat. All right, let's hear what this sounds like. I did the second ending. We're going to do the last 3 lines, and I'll play through that. Here's how it sounds. All right, that completes the song. We're going to actually hear what the song sounds like. I'm going to play along with it, and let's get an idea what this sounds like. And here we go. And that's pretty much it. That is the basis of the song. All right, we're going to move on to the next page, 43. And page 43 is a song called Build It Up. And this is number 83 is the exercise. It basically has an intro, first verse, second verse, and third verse. And however, like the other one has a first and second ending, this does not have a first and second ending. It just kind of goes all the way through the song. So I'm going to basically break this down, and we'll do it line by line like we did the last song. And we'll try out the very first part here. So let's start this off. Basically, this whole song starts off with the bass drum and a snare drum. And then it gets a little bit more involved each line as we go down. We keep adding things to it, like the hi-hat, and then eventually the ride cymbal, and then toms and stuff like that, so we can do fills. But let's start off the very first part of this. Here's how it goes. All right, as you can see, the first line, not too hard, fairly easy. Again, we had no cymbals in it. It was just the drums to start off with, and that's kind of like the introduction. Now we're going into the first verse, and we're going to start adding the eighth notes on the hi-hat. So here's how this goes. All right, as you can see, we had the repeat signs, just like we did in the first line. Again, the repeat signs basically were to repeat the previous measure. And that's very important. Whenever you see one of those, you just go back a measure and you play the same measure again, so that way the writer doesn't have to write out each pattern on each measure. It's another way to make it easier for him and easier for the reader. And then the last thing, on the very last measure, we had that hi-hat opening. It went 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we opened it up, okay? So let's go on to the third line, and here's how this sounds. Okay, third line, fairly easy. Again, just the pattern played 3 times. Again, because we had those one measure repeats. And we're going into the fourth line. This is our first fill. We're going to hit a crash after the fill. And we're going to use the snare and the 3 toms. And here's how this sounds. So let's try this out. Let's try it again. 1, 2, ready, go. Okay, that was the fourth line. The next line, sixth line right here, it's going to be a little more involved. We're going to hit a double snare on the first measure. We're going to open up the hi-hat right after we do that. And then we're going to play through it with the regular beat. And let's see how that sounds. Let's try this out. All right, the next line, we're going to do another tom fill. It's a little more intricate with this one because we're using the bass and the snare in a different spot where we normally play it. And then after we do the fill, it's going to switch to the third verse, and we're going to go to the ride cymbal. So we go from the hi-hat to the ride, and that's the transition that we do, that fill. That's going to be the transition to go from the hi-hat to the ride cymbal. So let's hear what this sounds like. All right, and as you can see, we use the crash with the snare. A lot of times when we crash, we're always hitting that bass drum. That's one of the 2 ways you can do it. You can either hit a crash with a bass, crash with a snare drum. It's very important to play one or the other, because just hitting a crash by itself doesn't give a lot of substance or little, not as much power to the end of a song or the beginning of a fill or the end of a fill. It just doesn't give enough power. So we need that power with the bass drum or the snare drum to give it that oomph that that crash needs, okay? All right, then next we have one more fill coming up, and it's a 16th note fill. and it's going to be using, again, the snare and the 3 toms. We're still on the ride cymbal, and we're going to be continuing through the ride cymbal through the rest of the song. So let's try this next line. We've got 2 more lines. This is the line with the fill. Here we go. All right, and then the last line is going to have some crashes with the snare again, and it pretty much ends at that. So let's try the last line. Here's what this sounds like. All right, now we're going to try out the song, build it up with the actual music, and I'm going to play along to it. Okay, let's get this pulled up. Okay, and as you can see, very easy to do. You just got to take your time and practice things very slowly before you play along with the recording. Same thing with the If at First, the very first song we played. And again, just take your time with it. You can break the song in little pieces and then work on those little spots that you're having issues with. And then once you get comfortable with it, then put the whole section together and then eventually put the whole song together. All right, we're going to turn the page. We're on the last song that we're going to do for today. This is called Halftime. It's basically showing the song with 16th notes and then the same song again. I'm going to play it's the same song, but I'm going to be playing it 2 different times. One's going to be the 16th note version and then the 8th note version to show you different ways of writing the same thing, okay? So for instance, this one's called, it's the exercise 84. It's all the same is the name of it. It's all the same. And this basically has a 16th note pattern with the hi-hat. You're using 1 stick. And then pretty much the bass drum is doing a little bit of a funky pattern because we've got it going on the So as we play, we go 1 E and and then the bass drum will hit down. And then we'll play all the way through it. It's a 3-line song, so it's very simple. But I'm going to play the first line, and then we'll play the second line and the third, and then I'll put it all together along with the music, okay? So here's how we do it. Okay, second line. Same kind of idea. It's going to get a little bit busier, not much, but just a little bit. And here's how this sounds. Okay, the next one, the last line. This is the busiest of all, the last measure just before the crash. Here's how this goes. All right, we're going to play the same thing again. This time it's going to be with the eighth notes. Now the eighth notes can be played faster so that they do sound like 16th notes. But the trick here is that every one measure at the top where the 16th notes were, it takes two eighth note versions to make that one 16th note version. Basically what it is that because we're playing half the speed, we're speeding it up, it matches the same tempo, but as far as the notation, it's a little different because of the eighth notes and the 16ths. Eighth notes are slower, 16ths are faster. So those have to connect somehow, and what we do is we speed up the eighth notes to make them sound like 16th notes. And then the writer writes it just with regular eighth notes, so it looks like it's eighth notes, and it looks like it could be, an average, pattern. But it's a little trickier because it's still kind of got that funky beat to it. So I'm going to play it again. I'll play all three lines together on this one because it's the same that we just did with the 16ths. It's just a different way of writing it. Okay, so here this goes. All right, now we're going to play the tune, and I'll play both versions. So we're going to play the song twice, just so you can hear what it sounds like both ways, okay? Here we go. All right, well, that is the show for this time. I'm glad you guys stopped by. Thanks for watching the show. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me a line at joedrums1@comcast.net. And if you guys, like I said, if you're interested in drum lessons, it's definitely the way to go. It's a lot of fun. I urge you guys to check it out. And I'll see you guys on the next show. This is Joe Drums signing off. You guys take care. We'll see you on the next show. Have a great one.